It's that nerd Ryan here, and today we're reviewing Forrest Gump for movie night. I actually did a guys' night double feature of this and the Holy Grail, but we already talked about the Holy Grail, so we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about Forrest Gump. So this is actually, I've seen this movie, but I've only seen it in bits. So I've never sat down and watched it from beginning to end until last night. And I've been wanting to review this movie for about a year now and just never had the time. But now, here we are. So I'll do the quick summary, then we'll talk about some other stuff and give it a rating. So basically what happens is we get to see the life of a neurodivergent person named Forrest from basically the early 1950s all the way up to the 1980s. So we get to see how he was given braces for his legs so his spine could straighten up, and him teaching Elvis how to dance as some of the first scenes in this movie. It's also narrated by Forrest, which I never saw this part. I didn't know he was actually named after the founder of the KKK in the movie, which is crazy. But yeah, so we get to see that. Then he meets the love of his life, Jen A, and as they're both kids, and they go through school together. She also comes over at his house at night when she's scared. She has a terrible father. All the tropes of, a character like Jenny. As a child. So her and Forrest kind of grow up together. They are best friends and kind of nothing more until the end of the movie. Forrest absolutely loves her. She kind of loves him, but she treats him like crap through the entire movie. But as Forrest is getting bullied when he's between 10 or 12, he starts running, breaks out of his leg braces, and literally becomes one of the fastest people alive. But yeah, so we get to see him kind of run, go to Jenny's, sometimes gets to see Jenny's life, and then we get to progress to when they are 18. And the same thing happens again. Forrest is getting bullied, and he starts to run. He runs on the practice football field where he becomes a running back for football in college. He gets a free ride to college. Jenny goes to an all-girls school. He catches her about to sleep with someone and takes it as in he's hurting her, so he attacks the guy, not understanding what's going on. Then she kind of tries to explain it, I think is a good way of saying it. To him by kind of trying to show him, and he doesn't feel comfortable with it. But yeah, after that, Jenny leaves college because she gets kicked out for going into Playboy while in college, She then, as that happens, Forrest graduates and he joins the military. On his day before he gets shipped out to Vietnam, he gets to see her perform live at a strip club, not knowing that it's a strip club. And he gets sent off. He meets his bestest friend, Bubba, during the military training. They go off together. They plan to put a shrimp boat and become shrimpers after the war. As that happens, they also meet Lieutenant Dan, who's their CO, and he kind of just shows them the ropes and they go on some missions together, and then an ambush happens. Forrest's entire team gets ambushed and almost wiped out, and Forrest runs away, but then he goes back to save Bubba, and in that time he ends up saving about 5 or 6 people, one of them being Lieutenant Dan, who wanted to die at war because his entire family died at war. Lieutenant Dan ends up losing his legs. Forrest gets shot in the butt, and then he goes back to find Bubba, I can't remember if he gets shot in the butt with Lieutenant Dan or with Bubba. I think it's with Bubba. And he brings Bubba back, and Bubba dies in his arms, which is a tough scene to watch. But yeah, so Forrest goes back through Med Bay, and he's right next to Lieutenant Dan, who lost his legs. And Lieutenant Dan originally hates him because he was supposed to die there, and Forrest stole that from him. During his time, Forrest learns to love ping pong, where he becomes a ping pong champion and goes in for the special forces for the army to entertain troops by playing ping pong. He even goes all the way to China to play ping pong. And then he finally gets released. And one of the funniest parts, which like my friend who's never seen the movie before didn't catch, was that Forrest is thinking that he's stealing his ping pong paddle. Because like he's like, dude, does that mean I can't play ping pong anymore? They're like, not for the army. So he's like, as the guy walks away, he looks at the paddle and he starts running away with the paddle. But yeah, so that happens. As this is going, Jenny's life is deteriorating farther and farther. Forrest then meets the president for the second time. I forgot to say he met Kennedy. He met Kennedy, Nixon, which was the third time, and Johnson. He met those three presidents. He met Johnson when he got a Medal of Honor for saving everybody, which me and my friend also said that he would get a Purple Heart too for getting injured during the war. But then with China, he gets to meet Nixon, and he actually causes Watergate. And then he reunites with Lieutenant Dan, whose life is also falling apart. But before that, Forrest does give a speech about coming back from Vietnam, where he reunites with Jenny again, and they meet the famous superhero group that's not a superhero group at the time, that I'm not going to mention just in case there is an issue with YouTube's algorithm, but for those who've seen the movie, you understand. He meets up with a particular group of people who are trying to do radical change. Honestly, it's for the better, but it's in a radical way. He also meets Jenny's boyfriend, who's abusive, and then she runs off yet again. Then he does the ping pong thing. Then he starts hanging out with Lieutenant Dan, and he tells him about his and Bubba's dream of a fishing boat, where Lieutenant Dan kind of laughs at him and he goes, well, I'll be your first mate if that ever happens. I'll be an astronaut when that happens. Which both of those kind of do pay off in and out of the movie. So Forrest ends up getting a lot of money for the ping pong thing. He also, so he takes all that money and buys a shrimp boat and starts trying to be a shrimper, where Lieutenant Dan shows up and becomes his first mate. During the time they start really getting good shrimp, they make a company called Gump Shrimp, and Forrest gives it to Lieutenant Dan, who invests him into Apple, so that way he never has to worry about money again, and he also donates a lot of it. During that time, Jenny shows up again, recovering from being a drug addict. In that time, she sleeps with Forrest and leaves again. And Forrest's mom dies right before that too, I forgot to mention. So Forrest has nobody at that point, to where he just decides to run. He runs for 3 years, and then when he gets back, he gets contacted by Jenny to meet up with him. And then we're caught into the modern day where he was telling his whole story. He ends up going 5 blocks and meeting her, finds out that he fathered a son, and she's dying of AIDS. And the movie ends with him raising Forrest on his own. His kid Forrest on his own. The movie is very good, very inspiring, very emotional. I do have to say, though, Jenny is honestly a terrible person. She's a good character, but she's terrible to Forrest, just takes advantage of him. And there's some really emotional parts. There's a part where I always choke up when he first meets Forrest, and the first thing he asks is he smart or is he like me? And it's like just a heartbreaking thing, but that's the first thing he thinks about. But I mean, there's some really funny parts, like Forrest not understanding sarcasm, or like when he meets up with Lieutenant Dan with the shrimp boat and the boat crashes in because he forgets to put it in park, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a phenomenal movie. Really enjoyed it. It was kind of jarring to watch that and then Monty Python and the Holy Grail back to back. But yeah, I really liked it. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell. Follow me on all my social media down below. It's that nerd Ryan, signing out.